Everybody, thank you for joining us. We're just letting more people in, so we'll get started soon. We'll get started like right at 6 o'clock, if that's fine with everybody. Yeah, just getting this up. Has everyone been doing well in the chat? Just wondering how everyone's doing. Okay, so it's 6 o'clock, so we're gonna get started. Hi, everyone. Thank you all for showing up today. We all really appreciate it. We're excited to have Kevin Temmer here speak for us. I just want to let you all know, given like the time frame of the event, since it's only an hour, we may potentially not have time for questions, and I do apologize in advance for that. Thank you all for understanding, and I hope you enjoy our speaker, Kevin Temmer, and I'll let Kevin take it away. Thank you, guys.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming. My name is Kevin Temmer. I am an animator. I've been in the industry for a little while now and hopped around between a bunch of different companies. And on that crazy journey, I feel like I learned a lot. And I'm hoping to share that knowledge with all of you to kind of help you all figure out some stuff that I wish people told me when I started out in the industry, so that hopefully it can make things a little smoother for you all. But yeah, thank you all for coming, and yeah, let's get this thing started. So, when I was a kid, I had a lot of influences growing up, Nintendo games, animated movies, all sorts of things. I just consumed so much media, and at the time, I wasn't quite sure if it was productive or not. But eventually, I realized that all of this was preparing me for a career in animation. I loved all this stuff so much; it brought me so much joy that knew I wanted to be involved in it somehow, and give other people that joy by creating these things. So yeah. These are all the different cartoons and TV shows and movies that I watched growing up, and they all definitely had an influence on my style. And yeah, and I guess I always hoped that I could also create things to inspire other people and just continue that endless cycle of inspiration. So these these are sort of the mainstream software that people use out there. Autodesk Maya for 3D animation, Adobe Flash for 2D animation. But when I was a kid, I did not know these things existed. So I searched all over the internet trying to find software to be able to animate with. And so I found this one for 3D animation and this one for 2D animation. So basically knockoffs like, oh, we have Maya at home. It's Carrara 3. And so these are the ways that I learned animation by sort of just experimenting and self-teaching for a while before I really knew what to do or, what professional things were out there. So I just experimented a lot and just made a whole bunch of different weird animations. It's all I really did in my free time. And I fell in love with it. I was so passionate about it, and I knew that I just wanted to keep doing it and keep getting better at it. Um, and yeah, I just kept practicing and practicing. And eventually, my parents found out about a school in Florida where I lived called Ringling College of Art and Design. And it seemed like a really cool school. It seemed like they had a good reputation. And so I decided I would apply there. And this is one of the things I made while at Ringling. It was for one of the assignments. But yeah, that's where I learned computer animation. They gave us a pretty well-rounded knowledge on the pipeline, so like lighting, rigging, animating, texturing, all these different things. Um, kind of give us that kind of main understanding. But while I was there, I definitely knew that animation was the thing that I wanted to specialize in. So while I was at Ringling, they had recruiters come on campus and give interviews to find potential people for potential internships and jobs, etc. And JibJab was one of those companies. They did an interview with me on campus. I sent them my stuff, and they liked my stuff, and so I got an internship between my junior and senior year of college. And I got to work on one of their e-cards. JibJab is known for making these online greeting cards where you can put your face in. So I basically had to animate with this really creepy face staring at me the entire time. But it was a really fun experience. It was my first time in California. The people there were super nice, super talented, and creative. So it was a really nice first step into the industry. Um, After that internship, I went back to college to do my senior year. And then toward the end of my senior year, I got an offer from Blue Sky for an internship. And this was really exciting. This was like going right into a big studio. It was very like a surreal experience for me. So I did an internship with them, and that led to a full-time job there, and I worked on a few movies while I was there. Um, Ice Age 5, and yes, there are five of them, and I think they're making a sixth one now. Ferdinand and Spies in Disguise, and it was definitely a tough experience. I would say I learned a lot, and the people there were amazing, but I did find it very challenging to, I guess, work within such a big studio with such high expectations. I think I came out of college thinking I was a big shot or something, but then I got a wake up call when I actually got hired at a studio, and I realized I had a lot to learn. This isn't to scare you or anything, but sometimes I think being thrown out into the game can really be a humbling and good experience that kind of teaches you, um, I guess, more about your surroundings in the industry. So I learned a ton while working there. I worked there a few years. Um, but I was going through a bit of an existential crisis because of how challenging it was there. I felt like I wasn't getting the fulfillment out of my job that I thought I would get when in college, because in college I was just so passionate and I thought, oh, all I have to do is get a job at a big studio and then I'll be happy. But that wasn't necessarily the case. So I had to start thinking about what I really wanted to do with my life. Do I want to continue animation? So I started creating videos on the side. This is while I was still at Blue Sky. I basically started writing songs, which is another passion of mine, and making little animated comedy videos to go along with them. And even though they were pretty dumb and not the best thing you've seen, they gave me a lot of fulfillment. I realized I really enjoyed creating things for myself. After working the whole day creating stuff for other people and having to follow their notes and everything like that, this was very freeing for me. So I continued doing that while at Blue Sky and also after I left Blue Sky. The next place I worked at after Blue Sky was Sony Interactive Entertainment. So at the time when I was working at Blue Sky, I was living in New York. So I then moved from there to California. So big move, picked up my life. I basically stayed in an Airbnb for months as I was trying to figure out if this is what I wanted to do. Um, Sony Interactive Entertainment was a pretty cool place. Once again, really great people. Got to work on an Avengers game that didn't do too well. But then I worked on this other game called Concrete Genie. Now, when I worked on the Avengers game, it was my first time working with motion capture. So essentially, it was a completely different way of animating than I was used to, and I found that I didn't really enjoy it. It didn't really feel like animation to me, if that makes sense. It's just like a different kind of animation. Um, Less cartoony. I felt like cartoony animation was more my style instead of like tweaking existing motion capture animation. But then after that, we worked on Concrete Genie, And that one was great. That one was a typical keyframe animation project, and I had a blast working on that. And that was a really good experience for me because I feel like it made me realize I do like animating, that I shouldn't give up on it. It's just that it has to be in the right kind of circumstances. And working at these different studios, I already learned so much about what I like and what I don't like, and I feel like I was getting closer and closer to finding where I belong. And after that, I worked at a place called Jam City, which is a mobile game company. The way I got the job here was that I actually knew some people there who went to Ringling with me. So this is one of those examples of how sometimes knowing people can help you at least get an interview for a job. And yeah, so I got to work on mobile games while I was there, which is very different from feature films and console games. But I got to learn about this whole different world that I really knew nothing about. So this is one of the games I worked on while I was over there. It was a pretty fun experience, going from working with these super high quality complex characters to these super simple characters was a huge jump. And I started to realize that I actually enjoyed working at smaller studios on smaller projects a lot more than working at big studios. My whole time in college, I thought I need to go to a big studio. I need to go to Disney or I'm a failure. And it turns out it was kind of the opposite, where I realized, oh no, wait, this is actually kind of fun just working on smaller things where you get creative freedom, where you feel like you have more of a say and you can experiment a little more. So this was really helping me figure out the kind of stuff that I like doing. Um, as I worked there, I continued to make videos on the side. And I switched from my live action videos to animated videos. I found sort of a workflow to feasibly do that for myself. Although the videos did get less and less feasible as they got more and more complex, but I still really enjoyed making them. And it also allowed me to start gaining a following on social media, as well as make a bit of side income, which was really nice. So so even though I did enjoy a lot about Jam City, I still felt like my true fulfillment was being realized with my side projects. So, I kept continuing those side projects and creating and just experimenting. The next place I worked at was called Squanch Games. Um, it is a studio that used to be run by Justin Roiland, but then there was a controversy with him and he's no longer at the studio. I left the studio before the controversy happened, and just weird timing, I suppose. But yeah, so I worked on a game there. Again, it was a small studio, so I found that I did enjoy kind of it felt like there was less pressure than working at the bigger studios. It felt like there was more room for experimenting and contributing ideas not outside of like my animation abilities. Um, but I did find that I was getting to a point where there wasn't like a lot of upward momentum. I didn't know if there was a way to, be promoted or, kind of move in my career. So while I was there, this other company, Glitch Productions, reached out to me. So other Kevin, who the CEO is also named Kevin, which is confusing sometimes. He reached out to me and he said, "Hey, I like all these videos you've been posting on just like your little animated music videos." And I was like, "Oh, thank you." And we talked a bit, and nothing much happened for a while. But then suddenly he reached out to me and said, "Hey, we're working on this new show about it's like a circus with wacky characters, and we think you'd be great on it. Would you be willing to animate the teaser trailer for us and maybe also join us as a full-time lead animator?" Um, and I was very flattered, and I definitely wanted to be involved. I looked at the characters and I was like, this looks like it was made for me. But at the time, I still worked at Squanch Games, so I didn't think it was a good idea to completely walk away from the job I had. So I said, I'll do the freelance thing, but I don't think I can switch to a full-time gig right now. Um, so when I first asked Squanch Games if I could moonlight and do this freelance for them, they said no because I had a non-compete agreement. And at first I was like, well, wait a second, this is a completely different audience. Squanch makes video games, Glitch makes animated shows on YouTube. So I asked them again, and I said, hey, it's a different audience. I don't think it's a direct competitor. And they said, well, okay, you make a good point. Why don't you, yeah, you can do the freelance. And I'm so glad they did. They said I could do that because then it eventually led to the job at Glitch. So I started working on the trailer for them, and it was definitely hard juggling that with my other job. So there was a point where, Kevin, the CEO, he messaged me and said, hey, can we have a little video chat? And I was terrified. I thought, oh my God, I'm not doing this fast enough, or I'm doing a bad job, and they want to fire me from this freelance project. So, we do the video chat, and he says, hey, we really like the stuff you're doing. Do you want to work with us full time? So I was like, oh. um, so I thought about it because, this was a huge jump. This would be my first lead position. I didn't know if I was ready for that. Also, it was a studio in Australia, and I didn't know how we were going to figure out the logistics of me legally working for them because I live in the United States. But I decided it was a risk worth taking, and I felt like I would never get an opportunity like this again, or at least very rarely. And so I said yes. And so I jumped on board, and we figured out all the logistics and everything. And I'm really glad I said yes because it just has led to this amazing journey there. Um, yeah, so I got to work on this show, which has been one of the most fun projects I've ever worked on. And yeah, I feel really blessed that my path led this way, even though it's nothing like I expected or planned for back when I was in college. Um, so yeah, we made a pilot for a digital circus. It did way better than we thought it would. We knew we were doing something really good. We knew we had a lot of talented people and they were just having a lot of fun with it, but we had no idea it was going to be this crazy phenomenon with live shows in Latin America. And a pop-up cafe in Japan, and yeah, it just got crazy, and then eventually led to a Netflix deal as well, where Netflix did something that they've never done before, where they don't own the rights to it. They just have the rights to stream the show, but it still premieres first on YouTube. So that was really exciting as well because it seemed like a really big step for indie animation where big studios are starting to have more respect for creators. And if more streaming services follow suit like this, it could lead to more situations where creators have more power over their content, where they maybe own their characters, and where it's not like streaming platforms just buying IP from people. So really really exciting stuff. And then it also led to an Annie nomination, um, which I was not even that's not even something I was thinking about dreaming of. I didn't even think that was like in the cards for me. I really do feel like if I didn't work at Glitch, this wouldn't have happened. I feel like it was just like all these cards kind of like set in the right place, and all these like puzzle pieces came into the right place. Granted, I didn't win, but it was amazing just getting nominated and going to the Annie Awards. It was a really cool experience. Cool. So to recap on my journey, what I originally planned when I was back in art school was I thought you just go from art school to Disney. That's what I need to do to be successful. That's how I'll feel good about myself. But in reality, it was a lot more all over the place and not really linear. Starting in feature, having an existential crisis, going to mobile games, and then web series, and yeah, so I think the biggest thing I learned from this is that often life will not go as you plan it. Life, your career, anything. There's so many things that we don't have control over, but there are often times where it ends up even better than you expected because a lot of the things that have happened to me are things I didn't even think to dream of or think to plan for. So I wish that my art college self could have known this back then, and I wouldn't have been so hard on myself when things weren't going the way I planned them. Okay. So, like I said, there isn't one path to success. Oh, sorry. Wait, this is getting stuck. Oh, is it not working? Sorry, one sec. I think I got technical difficulties. One second. I think I'm gonna stop sharing my screen for just a second. Oh, I think it's my. Oh, that worked. Oh, okay, never mind. I think okay, I think we're all good. Sorry about that. Okay. Oh wait, is it still not working? Okay, I think this should be fine. Sorry about that. Okay, cool. So, these are ways I learned to get a job in the industry. Um, so going to art school was one of the ways that was really helpful for me. It allowed they had recruiters come on campus. That was like a huge advantage. Um, but it's not the only way anymore. I think back when I was in art school, it felt like that was the only way to get a job in the industry. But now there's so many other resources, and I'll get a little bit more into that later. But knowing people, this kind of connects back to the going to art school because friends I made there, or just by going to Ringling, I was able to kind of be buddy buddy with other Ringling people. So that helped me get the job at Jam City and then making and sharing art. So all my side projects that I did along the way, that's what helped me get the job at Glitch Productions. So there are so many different ways now to get a job in the art field, and there's so many resources online now. There's free software like Blender. There's all these tutorials. There's so many resources out there now that you're seeing, like kids who are only like 14 making things that look super professional. That one kid that made a Lego animation and then he got a job animating a scene for the Spider-Verse. That probably could have never happened like 10 years ago, but so much has changed now. And even though the internet can be a hellscape at times, it can also be very useful if you know how to use it the right way. So I can't stress how important it is to not only make a lot of art, but to share that art with the world. Even if you think it's not perfect, even if you think it's not good, you have to put your stuff out there or no one is going to see it. Um, and not everyone is going to like the stuff that you make, but that's not the important thing. The important thing is that you find people that do resonate, with that work. There's a lot of people that hate a lot of the stuff I make, but you can't let it bring you down. You can't let that fear stop you. You just have to keep putting stuff out there. Um, but yeah, I feel like you really don't have to go to art school. I think it still can be really useful, but it's all about what path is right for you. If you can afford it, I'm still paying off student loans. I'm toward the end of it, but I think it's definitely something people need to be aware of that it can take a while to pay them off. So there's definitely pros and cons to it. So I would say consider all your options, right? Consider all the resources out there, the resources you have, and try to really figure out what the right path is for you. And the good thing is, even if you start on a path, as you saw, my path diverged and went all over the place. So you don't have to stick to that one path forever. It's not set in stone. So, I think it's really about being flexible and going with the flow of life and where it takes you. And I think oh yeah, there we go. So pros of art school: making friends, connections, recruiters come to campus, teachers and resources. Cons: expensive. Alternatives: online classes, self-teaching through tutorials. All right, and knowing people. Yeah, so I went a little ahead, but this just kind of covers what I went through. Right, all right. So I do highly recommend reaching out to artists that you admire on the internet. It's so much easier to find people who work on shows. Like, they all have social media and things like that. But it's very important to be respectful when you reach out to them. They are they're just human beings. They're not, it's so easy to put people on pedestals, but at the end of the day, they're all just human beings who like to make art just like all of you. If they don't respond, sometimes you can try like waiting a little while and trying again, but really do not, you should try to not harass artists. If they don't respond to you, they might be busy or they just might not respond for one reason or another. Try not to take it personally. The more people who you reach out to, the more you increase your chances of someone maybe responding. But you really do have to understand, right, that they're just human beings that are busy with their jobs. And if they do reach out to you, if they respond, that's great. And, I reached out to artists when I was a kid and I sent them my work, and I think it definitely helped me build connections. Um, And then, yeah, going to cons and events. That's something that I really didn't do for most of my life, and I only started recently going to cons, and I really enjoy them. I think it's really cool being around other inspiring artists and just kind of geeking out together over the same things and making connections. It's just really cool to be around your own people, and I highly recommend it. And make business cards too. That's something I wish I brought when I went to cons, because I got so many business cards from other people. And then, of course, social media, posting on any social media platform you can think of: Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. Every social media platform has a different algorithm. And so something that might do poorly on one might do really well on another. So, the more that different kinds you post on, the more you increase your chances of something doing well, or building an audience, or even just making connections with other artists. Making, sharing art. Yep, social media. We talked about that. Trial and error. A lot of my work has been trial and error. Sometimes I'll make things. When I made those live action music videos, they didn't really catch on, and I tried for a while, but I got to the point where I'm like, yeah, these just aren't really like, people aren't digging these, and I realized like I could bring more people in. I could make the videos more entertaining if I animated them. I think for a while I was afraid of the feasibility of it, but once I experimented and figured out how I could recreate those kinds of videos, it kind of took off. Self-marketing. This is a hard one. I think a lot of us artists are shy and want to keep to ourselves, and we're all our own worst critics, but you really do have to sell yourself to a certain extent. And sometimes, I definitely have reposted my own stuff repeatedly to the point where I'm sure it annoys some people, but sometimes you do kind of have to remind people out there that you exist. There's so much art out there that you have to find ways to stand out, and you have to really try to find that pride in your own work and in your own voice. And finding your voice can definitely take a while, and that happens through the practice and the trial and error and just that discovery of what you enjoy making, or what you don't enjoy making, which I feel is just as important. In my career, learning the things that I don't like to do was so helpful to getting me to the things that I do like to do. So, just because you're at a job that you don't like, it doesn't mean like, oh no, I'm a failure. I ended up at a place that I don't like. Or, and like I said, there was a time where I wasn't even sure if I wanted to continue doing animation, but I realized I did want to continue doing it once I worked at other studios and realized, okay, I like it in these different circumstances. So it really is a self-discovery journey, and it's about being patient with life and patient with yourself and not being hard on yourself, especially if you don't get a job in the industry right away, since our industry is a bit of a mess right now. Right. So why be optimistic? So right now, I'm sure as a lot of you know, um, the animation industry is a little bit on fire. Uh, a lot of people getting laid off. It can be really scary and it can be difficult to, give an optimistic speech to students who want to go into the industry. But I still am very optimistic about the industry, and a big part of that is in the animation. Um, my experience working at Glitch, I feel like we've been able to pave the way for other indie creators and indie studios, at least in small ways. Like, for example, that Netflix thing that happened where they liked the show so much and they saw how well it did that they were willing to try something that they'd never done before. They were willing to, give us more, basically all the control, because that's how much they wanted the original property. And that really says something where these big studios, they're not as successful as they used to be, and they don't really know what they're doing wrong. And a lot of it is about that fear of risk, right? That making sequels and sticking to things that work. And from a business perspective, I totally understand why. But what indie animation is proving is that people want to see original things, weird, new, cool things that aren't what people have seen before. So I believe that more indie studios are going to start popping up and indie creators, and I think that is where the jobs are going to be. And I think, ironically, that's where more of the job stability is going to be, unless these bigger studios start changing and adapting to the way things are. And my personal journey of realizing that I don't need to work at a big studio to be happy, and in fact, I prefer the smaller studios, that was such an important lesson for me. And I would definitely urge you all to consider that as well, that you might prefer working on a smaller studio to a big one. Um, so it really could have a lot of pros to it, that maybe didn't seem evident at first, or maybe didn't seem evident based on just like what the culture is in college and the pressure to get your dream job at one of the big ones. And like I said before, there's so many resources now on the internet. Use them. If you want to learn software, you could probably find a video on it somewhere, or some tutorial. Um, and like, if you can't get Maya, because it's too expensive, or you can't get the student version, there's Blender. There's free programs out there. There's free rigs out there. There's so many ways to just make things without having to spend a lot of money or without having to jump through hoops. Uh, there's less obstacles now between artists and their creations, and I think that's something to really think about. Um, and at the end of the day, no matter what happens, even if the world is ending, if we're in the apocalypse or whatever, people will always want to be entertained. I think even in the worst of times, people have always wanted entertainment. So I really think even with all the AI stuff going on, even with just all the chaos going on in the world right now, people will still need artists. Even if there are like full robot computer artists, people will still want human artists. I really, really feel optimistic about that. And I think it's important to stay optimistic about that. And so at the end of the day, your journey is really up to you. Uh, and there are going to be a lot of external factors that affect that journey, and sometimes there will be elements out of your control, but it's about understanding what elements are in your control and utilizing those and accepting the elements that aren't in control and being patient with yourself, being forgiving to yourself, that understanding that this is a competitive industry and just because you don't get a job at your dream studio, maybe you can end up just creating things yourself or getting a job at a smaller studio that turns out to be a lot more fun than the dream studio. But yeah, that is essentially my crazy animation journey so far, and I hope this was somewhat informative. I know it's unpredictable and scary, but if you're passionate about art, if you just sometimes you need to take a step back and remember that it's very easy to forget why we do this thing in the first place, when getting concerned about things like money and job stability. But I think if you take a step back and remember why you started doing this in the first place, it was never for the money, right? It was because you enjoy making art, you enjoy creating. So when I get stuck, I step back and remember that, and that really helps me get through the day and continue on my journey. And I'm really glad every time I continue to keep going because it got me this far. But yeah, that's essentially my presentation. And I think since we ended early, we might be able to have some Q&A time.
Yes, we do have some questions for you.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, let's do
Okay.
it.
Okay, so Samantha N, and I'll just read the questions off in the order it came in on the form. Okay, Samantha N asked, how did you get your motivation to get started with computer animation? What were your best resources for learning? And sorry, the way they phrased the question is a little, and did attending school, if you did, make a big contribution to how you work today? And they said you have such a unique style of animation.
Oh, thank you. I actually could you could you repeat the question? I'm sorry, there were a lot of parts to that.
Yeah, let me also copy paste the question in the chat if that's also easy for you.
Oh yeah, that works too.
Yeah, I know, sorry, it was a lot.
Oh no, it's all good. Yeah.
Okay, just copy paste it in the chat. And
Awesome,
would
awesome.
would you like us to record the Q&A session as well, Kevin?
Yeah,
Is that
that's fine. Yeah,
okay?
you can record it.
Okay, I'll keep recording it then. Thank
Okay.
you.
All right. Oh yeah, this is a lot better. Thank you for typing out the
Oh,
question.
you're welcome. Would you prefer I can do this for the rest of the questions if you'd like as well.
Yeah, sure thing. Yeah, that would be great.
Okay,
Yeah,
perfect.
so right. So my motivation to get started with computer animation, yeah, kind of like I mentioned earlier in the presentation, it was really just about all the media that I consumed as a kid. I just watching all that stuff, it just brought me a lot of joy, and I really wanted to like extend that joy further down and be able to be a part of it and create it. And just everything from like Disney movies, Nickelodeon cartoons, Cartoon Network, uh, DreamWorks, Sony, just like I love watching every different kind of animation out there. Stop motion, like Wallace and Gromit. Just I don't know. I have so many different like influences, and I find that it's now like an arsenal in my brain where I can utilize different, sometimes when I'm like, oh, I need to think of an example when a character slips on a banana peel or something like that. And then my brain will just think, I'll have a flash of a memory of one of the shows I watched. And I realize now that that whole time as a kid, I was just studying, that the watching was just studying. Um, and then what were your best resource or best sources for learning? So yeah, when I started out, it was a lot of like self-teaching and experimenting. Um, but then when I got to Ringling, that's what really helped me, learn Autodesk Maya, and kind of, I think it's like I had that passion and then I just had to kind of like get that structured education around it. But like I said, art school is now definitely not the only path to get to where you want. So, there are many paths to get there. Um, but yeah, I think that answers the question.
Okay, I'm gonna paste the next question in the chat then. I'll just like paste them as you finish.
Awesome, awesome.
Okay, I put the next question in the chat
Okay.
for you.
Okay. As someone who is primarily a 2D animator, what would you recommend for getting into beginning 3D animation, learning software, taking classes, etc.? Cool. Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know as much about learning 2D animation, but I think, or I'm sorry, right, you want to get into 3D animation, right, right, okay. So I think either like Blender or Maya could be helpful. Blender has all these really cool tools where you can do 2D and 3D animation in there. Like they have this grease pencil tool. I actually don't know how to use Blender yet. I really want to learn how because it just looks amazing. But I think, yeah, just like downloading either that or Maya and then like looking up the tutorials and just getting in there and animating. Download a free rig online, pick an audio clip that you like and just like animate to it. A lot of this you just learn by doing. Um, and they do have great online classes like Animation Mentor, iAnimate. There are a lot out there. They can be kind of pricey as well, but they're they're not, I think they're not as expensive as like doing the full art school thing. So there's so many different routes out there, but I really think like if you want to learn something, you'll probably be able to find some way to learn it online, potentially either like cheaply or even freely. So yeah, definitely just like look out there and see what's out there. Hopefully that was informative.
Oh, thank you, Kevin. I'll put the next one in the chat for you then.
Okay. What kind of changes are being made to the episodes now that they're both on Netflix and YouTube? The good news is, at least to my knowledge, there are no changes being made. And that's the beautiful thing about this new kind of deal that Netflix made with us, where they don't control anything. We make the episode, and we then we give it to them, and that's it. And if anything ever happened where like Netflix is like, oh, we don't want to put this on Netflix, um okay, then it wouldn't go on Netflix, but we'd still put it on YouTube because it would still be ours. So that's kind of the beauty of it, where there's no threat of cancellation, at least by Netflix, right? Like if they don't want to run it on Netflix anymore, then they won't, and we'll still make it for YouTube. But at the end of the day, we're just making the episodes we want to make. Exactly. It's the magic of going indie. So I really hope that that other streaming services are looking at Netflix and being like, oh, I gotta get on that. I gotta do that too, and give indie creators more power to cook and make their awesome work. Um, okay, I think I remember Gooseworks saying that the future. Yeah, I'm not sure about the censorship and things like that, but like I said, like I'm pretty sure that Netflix is not influencing our creative process at all. Like the CEO assured us that they are not affecting how we're making stuff. We're just letting our showrunners write their crazy stories and bring them to life. And yeah, and I think it would be cool involving Blender as well. Like someone mentioned Blender. Um, I know Gooseworks uses Blender. I think she used it to like model the preliminary versions of like the characters and stuff. So sometimes we will utilize Blender in kind of like the early stages. But yeah, it would be nice for it to like be more involved in the future, especially now that an animated film made with Blender won an Oscar. I think people are going to take it more seriously, and I could totally see it becoming the industry standard at one point. Yeah, flow. Awesome. Should we go to the next question?
Yes, I just sent it.
Oh, thank you. What is the biggest inspiration for your work? Oh man, that's hard. There's so many. There's so many. I think like I think 90s cartoons or 90s and early 2000s cartoons really impacted my style. I feel like I throw a lot of that, a lot of like the Gendy Tartakovsky, like pushed facial expressions and poses. Um, yeah, I really love that stuff. I feel like it's so charming, and I love trying to like keep that cartooniness alive, even when there's like style shifts and what's popular and what isn't.
I'm gonna put the next question now. There it
Sweet.
is.
What future projects are you looking forward to? What advice would you give to future animators and artists? Great question. Well, I'm looking forward to working more on Digital Circus. I've been having a lot of fun on it. I'm looking forward to working more on the Gaslight District, hopefully. Our pilot comes out tomorrow, I believe. So definitely watch that one. It is unlike anything I've ever seen before, and hopefully unlike anything other people have seen before too. It's really, really cool. So definitely check it out. But yeah, hoping to work on more of that. Hoping to work on more Digital Circus. Um, I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Yeah, I don't know. I guess just whatever the future has. I still have side projects I would like to do, but I am very busy with the day job, so it is difficult to balance that sometimes. Luckily, I have felt very fulfilled by this job. This is definitely like the most fulfilling job I've had in my career, so it has felt like kind of a fair trade-off where like even though I don't have as much time to do my own personal projects, I feel like I have that creative itch more satisfied by the day job. Because in the past, it was a lot of like the day job was okay, but not completely fulfilling me. And I had to do those side projects to get that full fulfillment. Um, was there a second? Oh, yeah. What advice would you give to future animators and artists? I think it can be very discouraging and challenging and inspiring to be around a lot of talented people. It's hard to not compare yourself to others um, because we're just constantly exposed to other people's work. But the thing that has gotten me by is focusing on the fact that you have something unique to contribute. No one, if everyone is given the same prompt, no one is going to make the exact same art piece, or same animation, same model, drawing, whatever. Everyone is going to interpret it differently, and that's where the value of being an artist lies. That everyone has that unique way of doing things. So no one is going to do it exactly like you. And once you kind of figure out your unique voice, it's about utilizing that. And because I honestly feel like sometimes it's not important to be the best because no one can be the best. It's important to stand out. I think that's more important than being the best. Um, it's still good to have those technical skills and the foundation and everything, but you're never going to be the best. So if you beat yourself up for not being the best, you're going to be sad all the time. So you really have to have that like self compassion and that self forgiveness and really give yourself more credit. Give yourself credit for the stuff that you've made so far and try to look forward to the stuff that you're going to make in the future.
Okay, perfect. I'm gonna send the other one right now.
Okay. What's been your biggest roadblock when it comes to making a career out of 3D animation? The profits, the workload, the feeling like everything you're doing will slowly amount to a video on YouTube asking for a friend. Wow, no, that's great. You're really hitting the nail on the head there. So I've definitely faced a lot of roadblocks in my career. I think a lot of them are more internal than external. I think a lot of that self-doubt, that imposter syndrome, which I still get to this day. It doesn't really completely go away. I think it's about understanding how to work with it and accept yourself and coexist with it. Um, yeah, things in profits and workload can definitely be tricky. Work-life balance is important. It's something I'm still figuring out, but I do think there's so much importance in work-life balance and prioritizing your health over your job because it can be so easy to get lost in the job or even lost in your personal projects and just want to finish something or feel like you have to finish something, but at the end of the day, like if you feel like it's killing you, you have to like stop and take a step back and really think about it. Because you're at the end of the day, your health is the most important thing. It doesn't matter what your boss says or what your CEO says. Your health is the most important thing. Don't let anyone try to convince you otherwise. Mental and physical health, by the way, both. Um, and the feeling that everything you're doing will suddenly end up on YouTube. Well, a lot of the work I do, most of the work I do directly goes on YouTube. So I don't think that that's too much of a problem for me. I've come to like YouTube. I think it's, it's nice just getting to go directly to the audience instead of having to jump through all these hoops. Um, but yeah, no, exactly. It can be easy to fall into comparing yourself to others. And like I said, I don't think it completely goes away, but you just have to keep remembering why you started doing this in the first place. It wasn't because you wanted to be better than everyone else. It's because you enjoy making art. And just try to keep finding ways to enjoy it and have fun. Our showrunner Goose is always telling people like, don't forget to have fun, and sometimes it feels like kind of a joke, but it's true. Like we try to do so much here to make sure that people are having fun with the work that they're doing and that they're feeling some sort of fulfillment. And it's not always perfect, but that's always been our goal. And I think that that should be everyone's personal goal. That if you're not having fun with what you're doing, try to figure out why and figure out like, do you need to look at it from a different point of view, or do you need to try working somewhere else? Every It's not going to be the same answer for everyone, but really just try to think about what gives you that joy and that fulfillment.
I'm gonna send the next two questions.
Sure.
And actually just in time. It's Ethan's questions. I think they
Oh
just
my
rejoined
God.
actually.
I get this all the time. How's the work on your dance party ending animation? And have you ever thought about pitching a show to Glitch? Um, so yeah, with the day job, it is now extremely hard for me to do projects on the side. With my other jobs, I had a lot more time to do that sort of thing. I have been trying to work on a side project, and I keep like starting and stopping it. But my goal is after I finish that side project to finish the dance party animation that they're talking about. So I do hope to finish that one day, in the foreseeable future. And then yeah, I have thought about pitching to Glitch. I kind of go back and forth on it because, you know, my experience kind of like working with the showrunners, being a showrunner is a very, very busy job. My job as a lead, I already feel very busy, but as a showrunner, you're dealing with every single department, and sometimes it feels like their whole life is their project, but they're okay with it because it's their baby, and so they're very like passionate about it. But there's definitely a trade-off and a lot of things to consider. And I think working at Glitch really helped me realize that, and just like witnessing all of that up close. So it's given me a lot more to consider, if I ever do think about, pitching something. But it is still kind of a dream in the back of my mind. I think it's just about weighing the pros and cons of the reality of it, because some people can handle that sort of pressure, and other people might prefer not to. And I think I'm still kind of figuring out where I lie on that.
Okay, I'm gonna send the next question in the chat.
Sure. What do you look for slash like to see included when working on a rigged 3D character model? Having controllers to freely move facial features, or having the access to squash and stretch body parts? Oh, great question. So yeah, squash and stretch is always a bonus. I think like the more flexibility, the better. But also, I think a lot of it is going to be about clarity, about how to get to the controls, where the controls are. If anything is not clear, like your rig should come with a guide or something. But yeah, like the organization and the clarity of it is super important, because a feature isn't really worth anything if the animator can't find it or doesn't know how to use it, right? So it's important about like those features being uh, easy to use. Um, and sometimes, yeah, sometimes it can get easy to like overcrowd a character with controls. So sometimes you could like have those controls on different layers or invisibility set driven keys, where those controls like can turn on and off. Um, Oh, nice. I don't know too much about Rigify. I'm guessing it's like an auto rigging tool. Um, but yeah, I think right. So like flexibility, complexity where it's necessary and simplicity where it's necessary. So sometimes it really depends on the context of what the project is, right? If it's a very cartoony show, then you want to make sure those characters squash and stretch. If it's a more realistic show, maybe you don't have as many squash and stretch things. Maybe you have more controls in the face. Um, so yeah, it can really depend on different contexts. Um, Maya is the industry standard for 3D, at least at the moment, but I think Blender could become later on. Um, so yeah, that's why like it's tough because I think Blender is going to be the future of animation. At the time, it still probably is useful to learn Maya because yes, they are two different programs and it is hard to like um, going from one to the other, at least in my experience, like being a Maya person and trying to learn Blender, it definitely feels like a steep learning curve. But yeah, so I think if you do want to be an animator, it would be good to learn Maya because I think most places still do use Maya. But I think learning them both is probably going to be the best thing to do. Like get yourself ahead of the game and be resourceful in multiple things because there was one time I had an opportunity to work on something, but then they found out I don't use Blender, so I wasn't able to do it because they needed it to be done in Blender. So I think the more software it does give you more opportunities for sure.
Okay, and then we just have one last question, if that's okay with you, Kevin. Is that
Yeah,
okay? I know we have 5 minutes left.
sure.
Okay, I'll just send it right now.
Okay, in smaller teams, how do you balance creative vision with technical constraints, especially when something looks cool but isn't cheap? Ooh, this is a great question. How is being your own actor for reference teach you about animation? Yeah, so this is definitely a tricky thing that we deal with all the time on making shows, whether it's like feature films or web series. There's always going to be limitations to what we do, and um, sometimes it's a matter of like the showrunner having to reel it in a bit and like make the scope less crazy. We had to do that a bit with murder drones where sometimes the scope was too big for us to handle and we had to kind of tone it down a bit. But then sometimes it can also be on the individual artist working on a scene, like an animator working on a shot. Sometimes we might want to do something really fancy and crazy, but we might not have the time for it. And that can definitely be a difficult skill to learn, which is like knowing when to pull back and when to go ham with your animation. And I think it's definitely something I'm still learning how to do, but it's something I'm trying to like be more aware of because yeah, no matter where you work, there's gonna be time limitations, and you just don't have all the time in the world, and you want to make something that looks good, so you have to really prioritize where you're putting your time and energy, working smarter, not harder. And yeah, I think like shooting reference, I don't do it all the time. I usually do it for specific moments, like where maybe I have more realistic acting or I just want to figure the acting out. But it does really teach you a lot about just, I think you see things that you don't notice when you're doing them. And just like little ticks or little mannerisms or even things with body mechanics, just sometimes you notice things that you're not consciously doing, and it's sometimes those unconscious things that people do that if you put that into your work, it will really make your character feel alive.
Okay, and then that was all the questions we have. And with the event almost ending, we would, if anyone would like to have their camera on, we're gonna take little photos. So if you'd
Oh,
like
I
to
love
put your
that.
camera on now, then we'll do that. We might have
Okay.
to do like maybe three separate screenshots because there's like three separate rows I see on my end. So I'll still
Okay.
say still smile, still smile. So please remain smiling. Okay, is everyone ready? Okay, we're gonna do it right now. Okay, smile right now. Okay, we're gonna do it another time. Okay. Okay, still smile, please. We're gonna do it another time. We just keep smiling. Okay, and then that was it. Thank you guys so much for coming to our event. We all appreciate it. And thank you, Kevin, for speaking for our both our clubs. We
Yeah,
all
no,
appreciate it.
thank you
Thank you
all so
so
much. Thank
much.
you for having me. This has been so much fun. I hope that the advice was helpful. You all are gonna do great. Just keep your chins up and just keep making things, keep doing things that you enjoy. And if you're passionate about art, keep making art.
Yes, thank you, Kevin. Well, you guys
Thank
are
you,
ready to go,
everyone.
then we'll see you soon. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Goodbye. Bye. Thank you for attending. Goodbye, guys. Thank you for attending. Thank you. Goodbye. Thank you. Hey guys, thank you for coming. Bye. Bye, guys. Okay, I'm gonna end the meeting for everyone. So goodbye, all. Have a
Bye,
good
Lena.
day.
Girl, you ate this
Bye.
up.
Thank you, guys.
Bye
Right
bye.
now.
I have
This
class
is
right. I have class. So
amazing.
goodbye, everybody. Thank you so much.
Goodbye.
Girl,